Now that clip allowed us to bring in our next member of Congress. And please introduce yourself, sir, and tell us, how did you vote on this big, beautiful bill?
Hey, Pat Harrigan, 10th District of North Carolina, voted a big yes on the big, beautiful bill.
Congratulations on the big, beautiful bill.
Thank you. That's incredible. You guys, really amazing.
Clyde, you got to let it play through. Let's try it again, Clyde. Try it again. Try it again.
Wow.
There you go.
Wow.
There you go. We got a live studio audience here. Pat Harrigan is the first time on the show. Just came back from watching the Vietnam Memorial, which is pretty dope.
Yeah, there was a group of veterans every year get together and go down, wash the Vietnam Memorial. It's a really, really cool thing because what you got to do before you wash it, you got to prepare it. And to prepare it, you got to take all the mementos that people come and bring from all over the country and set down for their loved ones and just what's down there, the little mementos with the different scriptures on it, different inscriptions, different little pieces of "I remember you" and this, that, or the other. Just it's a really special, touching time.
Yeah. So okay, so that went well. Everything's nice and sparkling.
It went great.
And,
Absolutely. Yeah. And doing that.
It's the most powerful memorial.
Oh,
I think it's the most powerful memorial in DC.
Without a doubt, because the first time the country really turned its back on its military, right? And to go do that and have that kind of be the cherry on top after this big, beautiful bill in the last 36 hours that we've been working on it with no sleep.
Yeah.
And to get to go down there and finish that was really cool.
But you're a Green Beret, bro. So you're like ready to rip.
But I'm an old Green Beret.
Okay.
I'm not a young guy anymore.
So what's up? What's harder, being going through Green Beret, becoming a Green Beret, and going through that training in that school and that skull cracking, or having to sit here in Congress and wait for something to happen?
It's different. Both are difficult.
Yeah.
And one is difficult from the perspective of you're being really tough on your body. You're being tough on mentally anguishing, right? In terms of the training or whatever it might be. And the other is tough up here because it's so easy to see the problems. Like everybody sees the problems, but up here we don't deal with them, right? In our private companies, we see a problem, we solve the problem immediately. And up here we study the problem. We spend a lot of money dancing around the problem, waiting to kind of see if the problem will still persist, 5, 6, 7 years later, and never really get to solve the problem until it absolutely becomes a crisis. And that's really frustrating to watch.
Yeah. So this is a good step, at least in a neutral or plateaued direction, right? Like this isn't what everybody wanted from the bill, but the bill is like a good step in the right direction.
It's definitely not what everybody wanted from the bill, particularly if you're on the more conservative side of the House. But the reality is probably the best of what could be negotiated. It absolutely encompasses the broad majority of President Trump's policies and gives them the permanence of law. And overall, from that perspective, the best of what you can get across the finish line is kind of the definition of a good bill.
I like the border security. It's the most we've ever spent on border security.
Yeah.
We had a bunch of fraud Republican leaders that promised us border security and funding, and nothing ever happened. So this is billions for border security, 275 billion.
Yes, it's a lot. And ultimately what that hopefully does is it makes it impossible for future administrations to fail to obey and enforce the law.
Yeah.
Right. It's because at some point, President Trump reduced illegal crossings by 99% just by changing authorities, right? And it's something that us military guys know. We didn't lose the last 30 years of war because we lost the war. We lost the war because our politicians lost the war because they tied our hands behind our backs and they handcuffed us and they didn't let us do what we do best, which is go win. And President Biden didn't allow the Border Patrol to fundamentally do their job because he didn't give them the authority to do it. That being said, we want to make sure that never happens. We want to have an absolutely world-class border where we know every single person that's coming across, who they are, what their intentions are, make sure that we don't have national security concerns here. And that's exactly what we've done.
So this has got to be a big victory day for you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. It's
Is that your favorite part of the bill?
My personal favorite part of the bill was the suppressors. I'm a big Second Amendment guy.
Let's go, man.
So I come out of the
So is it
firearms
taking the
space.
tax off the suppressors?
Yeah, it
Taking
takes the
6
tax
month-
off the
6 month
suppressors.
wait?
And I wish we went further with that too.
Sucks, man, because I bought a suppressor like a couple months ago.
It's going to get a
It's
lot
so
easier,
annoying.
Benny. It's about to get a lot easier and cheaper.
Okay,
and
well, I'm
cheaper,
glad. It
so.
makes me happy for my fellow countrymen.
Yeah.
What a pain in the ass
No
that
doubt.
process was.
No doubt.
Oh, great. You just bought this thing. Now you got to wait 8 months to get it.
Yeah, crazy.
That's insane, man.
Yeah, for something that's not even a firearm.
That's right. I could like 300 years ago, I could have bought a cannon,
right?
And just wandered around
Yeah.
Massachusetts with my cannon,
That's
shooting
exactly
birds
right.
or whatever.
It's wild how we've decided to classify some things, and the capricious and arbitrary nature of how the ATF goes and does business.
Tell me all about it.
We're starting to bring that to it.
I haven't done a lot of research on this, so tell me what's happened now with suppressors.
Well, really, all it did is just took the $200 stamp away, and we wanted to go much further, but really, Rich Hudson deserves the credit for getting this into reconciliation. He did a ton of work on it, and really kind of put his foot down. But a lot of folks were kind of working in the background alongside of him to make sure that, hey, we notched some 2A wins here, because it looked like we had this golden opportunity to get a lot of 2A wins, and we weren't going to get any. And there was kind of some issues and reasons for that, but we at least got one here, and I think it's a big one.
Where would you like to see him go? So in a dream bill, Congressman, where would you like to see it?
I'd like to see the full HPA brought in, right? So where suppressors aren't even regulated as certainly under the NFA. Would love to see them not even regulated as a firearm, because they're a firearm accessory, right? I mean, and people think, they call them silencers, right? There's nothing silent about a silencer. I mean, it's still loud, but at the very least, you get to preserve your hearing. Most other countries, even European countries, as liberal as they've become, you can just go in and buy a suppressor like that.
Is that so?
Yes, 100%. Really? Yeah, because what is it going to do? You're going to, hit somebody over the head with a cylindrical object? Like, I mean, that's
just gave me that.
That's all it is. I don't know what's on Tim Burchett's desk. I didn't know what was in it.
Yeah,
wasn't sure what I was picking up. So
okay, that's what we're talking about today. We're going there next. That and a carburetor.
Yeah. This is like one of those Pinky, what are we doing tonight? Trying to take over the world. Tim Burchett things, right?
I love the reference. I appreciate it. Older millennials, stand up and be proud. Okay, yeah, anything can happen in Tim Burchett's office. It's really something else. That's his bed right there. I can't believe it.
Super nervous being in here, by the way. We're on the baseball team together, and I've come to know Tim. And,
there's a whole wall of bats. Is this right?
I feel like I've come to know too much in some regards. So.
Yeah, he was telling us about working out with Marjorie Taylor Greene and how she kicked his ass.
Yeah, she's a beast.
Yeah. So, so in a bill that is properly written with the direction of Second Amendment freedom, what would we see out of this Republican Congress? What would you have crafted?
What I really would like to see is the entire, ultimately, right, is constitutional carry. That's the way that it should be
nationwide,
right? But shy of that, right? Because the art of the possible is 50-state reciprocity, and I do think that was possible in this. I actually kind of tried to go down the road on it a little ways, and it's just there's different ways to do it. Creating pay-fors, and that's maybe not the best. Some of that could be good, some of it could be bad. Functionally, we could have gotten to someone's ability to carry across all 50 states, but there just came some potential constitutional issues that, sometimes it's better to just be where you're at right now, and we'll continue to work over that. And I think we're going to get another bite at the apple on reconciliation anyway, as long as we get this through the Senate, and the Senate doesn't completely sabotage this sucker, which they become pretty good at doing. So we should get a second bite at the apple, and hopefully we can be a little bit more 2A focused now that we've got, a broad portion of the bigger, picture consequential tax things done.
He's a Green Beret. He's like 6'7". They could just send you over to have a conversation with Mitch McConnell. You just have a polite conversation.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah. I don't know if there really is any possibility of having a polite conversation with the Senate. As I've been taught since I've gotten here, they say that the House, the Democrats, they're kind of your adversary, but the real enemy up here is the Senate.
Yeah. Okay. So speaking of that, military man, law and order, LaMonica McIver punching police, military police, Homeland Security police, actually,
and getting arrested for it.
That's right. So what should happen there?
As she should get arrested for it, and she should be prosecuted. That's exactly what should happen.
But what about Congress? So Congress has a role to play here.
Look, I think Congress has a role to play in terms of being responsible and respectful citizens in their discourse, right? Just because you're Congress doesn't mean that you have any sort of special dispensation that other citizens don't get to have. You're still a member of the citizenry here, and you've got to follow the law. President Trump is creating an environment where, you know, we are going to enforce law and order in this country. And that's exactly what's playing out. That's great.
So, but would you be in favor of censure or kicking her off committees? You know, she's on the Homeland Security Committee. She's on the Homeland Security Committee, bro.
I know.
And here she is punching Homeland Security officers.
It's crazy.
So would you be in favor of that?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, and that's the direction that you were going. Forgive me for not.
No, I just, you know, so there's the prosecution that's happening with Lena Haba.
Yep.
You know, she's a friend of the show. We invited her on. We want her to kind of explain where that is. And we don't want the kid gloves on because we don't want this to happen. Yep. And we also know that there are members of the Trump and MAGA movement from New Jersey that languished for years on the same charges that have, there's zero direct evidence that they ever hit or punched or touched a police officer. But on the same charges on January 6th, they were locked up all the way through Trump's pardon. So it was effectively 5 years of pure law. People from her district, same federal charges, same judges even. And so everyone's here screaming, no one's above the law. Okay, fine, prove it.
Right. Yeah. That former two-tier system of justice that we had is now a one-tier system of justice, and it's moving in the right direction.
Okay. All right. Good. What about the rest of what about Republican leadership? This is an audience that is. We're not haters, okay? We just want the system. We want things to work. What we really want is the codification of President Trump's agenda. We really like the landslide victory. We like winning 7 swing states. We think that the American public, like if the Republicans don't backstab the president, we think that it's going to make very much a golden era. We think we're looking at like 12 or 20 years, maybe 100 years of like MAGA leadership in this country. The Republicans need to get off their ass and codify the agenda. Republican leadership seems like this is a good step in the right direction. What's next? A Doge bill? Executive order bills, like codifying executive orders for the president?
Well, I think a lot of us would have liked to see some of the savings that were identified in Doge actually codified in this reconciliation bill.
Are you a member of the Doge caucus? I don't know, actually.
Yes, I am. But it's,
baller.
No doubt. I mean, look, like we've got serious debt and deficit issues up here. I think everybody understands that. And this particular bill, it doesn't exacerbate that or those, but it doesn't really make them better. I mean, you got to think, right? We're saving in this reconciliation package. We're going to save $1.6 trillion over the next 10-year budgetary window. We are going to spend $87 trillion in the next 10 years. And so when you take a look at the total savings, you're going to save. You're going to spend $87 trillion. We're saving $1.6 trillion of that. Like all we're doing is we're taking the deficit curve and we're like, just like a tiny bit. I mean, just like the ever so slightest. I mean, honestly, if Congress was not able to get this type of savings across the board, I probably would have left because it's like, we're never going to be able to do it. There's no hope whatsoever. And I think that because we at least have something that is going to achieve some modicum of savings, and I think it's going to shave off about $120 billion in the first year from the deficit. Now our deficit's $1.8 trillion. So, you know, take that down to 165, 17, right? Again, just kind of a little tiny blip. It's better than nothing, and it's better than what Congress has done in the past. And so we still have a lot of work to do because we're going to borrow so much more money than we're going to bring in over even just the next 5 years, let alone this year, let alone the 10-year budgetary window. We have not made demonstrable progress towards fixing that. Now, what we have done is we have codified some really good policies, and presuming it gets through the Senate the way that it is right now. And those policies should create a pro-growth environment that allows small businesses, middle class, and really every single level of taxpayer to be successful, take more of the money that they earn, keep it in their pocket, invest it the way that they want to invest it in order to grow their wealth or, you know, live their American dream. And that will have an impact down the road on our revenues because it will increase revenues. We saw that from the 2017 TCGA. You know, this is great policy and that's awesome, but good policy kind of neutral on debt, right? Not a huge move in the right direction on debt. And so we got to be cognizant of that, and we got to deal with it.
In conclusion, Congressman, you got to be like really happy about what's happening with the American military right now.
Yeah.
This is something that's near and dear to your heart.
Yes, it is.
And it's
absolutely.
if you don't have good and strong and fit young men and women signing up for the American military, then we're going to have a tough role as a country.
Yes.
So talk me through the changes. I don't know how closely you're working with Pete Hegseth, but I assume relatively closely.
Yes.
Yeah. You're one of the members of Congress that still probably do a push-up.
And a pull-up.
Yeah.
More than one.
Okay.
A lot more than one.
All right. We already have recommendations in the chat to say, like, well, Burchett was talking about going to the gym with MTG, so the chat now wants us to go do that. So
you guys got to see Burchett in the gym. I mean, like, the guy is about this thick, right? I mean, he's just, it's great. He's in there every day. He is in there every single day, which.
Them's fighting words from Burchett's desk.
He's not here. Easy.
But talk us through like what can we expect over the next couple of years as a reset? We're like in a neck snapping period of culture change in the military.
Yeah.
Talk us through it.
Well, from a cultural perspective, right, we want to go back to a meritocracy. That's exactly what Pete Hegseth effectively campaigned on in order to become the selection for SecDef, and then ultimately got across the finish line in the Senate. And he's effectuating that change. I mean, there was a cultural rot in the military that I saw as I started to leave. So I left the Special Forces in 2016. One of the last things that I had to do was give my team transgender awareness training.
No.
It started to creep in right then. Yeah, I didn't do it, but I checked the box and I said that we did. But I mean, that was happening in the Special Forces at the end of the Obama administration, 2016, right? And what I saw when I came into Congress in 2025.
In the Special Forces?
Oh yeah, 100%. It's there. It was there. And you know, like, they don't go along with it, but it was there. It was being infused into it as I was leaving service. And when I came back in 2025 and now started getting involved in the military again, so basically like 8 years of separation, really, because end of 16, beginning of 25, 8 years of gap there. What I saw talking to our senior leaders was nothing short of absolute cultural rot. I mean, you know, giving speeches that have land acknowledgments in them, referring to servicemen and servicewomen as service persons, right? That's a very specific term. And when someone says that, when a general gets up and they say that publicly, that is a very, very intentional term. And it tells you everything you need to know about what's going on in their brain and in their heart. And we have to root that out of the military. It's got to go away, because that will cost American blood when reality actually sets in and we have to deal with some really difficult decisions that aren't prioritized by a DEI sort of a schema.
So hold on. I know the audience, I know the chat knows land acknowledgments, but I just want to set the table here. You're telling me that American military generals would get up and say, I'm speaking here on land that was once the Choctaw tribe.
I witnessed it personally after coming into office.
The same American military that fought to gain that land and spilled blood, quite famously, all across the nation in order to secure that land.
Yes. Yes.
And they're sitting there now kneeling before the same conquered tribes.
Yes.
As American military brass.
Yes.
That is sickening, bro. Yes. That is disgusting.
4-star general.
Would they go to Germany and like kneel before like Nazi high command, or like go to Imperial Japan and like surrender? That's effectively surrendering to the British in Yorktown.
Yes.
So they go to Yorktown and be like, this was once a British base, okay, and we want to like acknowledge you know, the general. Oh shoot, what was it? Cornwallis. Yeah. We want to acknowledge Cornwallis was here. That's what they're doing.
Yes. You're exactly right. And to give you kind of the perspective on what type of an impact this has, right? When you say kneeling down and when you say surrendering, I was in Copenhagen a couple weeks ago on a defense trip, because we are working very heavily on the Armed Services Committee to make sure that our European allies are paying their fair share for their own defense, that we don't care more about their defense than they do, right? And happy to report that a lot of European countries are actually stepping up. They're significantly increasing their defense spending. But we were with the Prime Minister of Denmark, and the Secretary of State equivalent, the Minister of Defense, all these very senior level folks were talking. And one of our delegation asked, and I said, this is such a beautiful city. How did you preserve the history through World War II? How did Copenhagen survive? And I will not say who said it, because it would be an international problem, right? But they said, oh, that's easy. We surrendered.
Yeah.
And you've got to understand, like, this is the mentality we have to root out of our military. Like, it has no place
that was a
in America.
Said that, or
no. That was a very senior foreign level person.
Oh, man.
Yes.
Okay. That's what we call a DEI hire.
It's, it's scary, right? When you have that, because you got to understand this, the military, it's real. Went to West Point, and everybody at West Point and all my peers are like, Pat, you get a free education, and you realize, you go through it and you're like, man, this is really incredible. This is a great honor. This education, I didn't have to pay for it. And you realize it is not free the second a bullet snaps right past your head. It's not free at all. And those decisions become very real. The consequences become very real. And there is no substitute for victory at that point in time. And if we have people that morally equivocate on what our values ought to be, what we should stand for in this country, we're going to lose the next fight that we might not choose to fight, right? We've been so weak for so long. And this is where I get very passionate about defense, because I ran for Congress because I was convinced that the way that we left Afghanistan condemned the world to conflict.
For real. Yeah.
Because we've been so weak for so long.
Pussies.
Right?
We were pussies on the world stage. Yeah.
Yes.
And not only that, we killed our own people.
Right.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
Do you remember watching? I mean, you probably watched it from a very different sense than I did. But I think everybody in the audience, let me know in the chat if you remember this, because we were live during this. You were watching the pullout from Afghanistan. It was summer 2021, and there was like this feeling that something horrible was about to happen. And you watched the Taliban swoop in, and you watched everything collapse, and you saw the helicopters. It's amazing how they buried that footage. You saw the helicopters taken off from the U.S. Embassy. And there was this cloud of darkness where it's like, fuck, man, something horrible is about to happen. It was so predictable.
Yes. Guys
like me, I did not serve, right?
Yep.
But guys like me, like just regular Americans, could feel that energy, that like these jackasses are so incompetent. They're being so retarded here that something terrible's about to happen.
Yeah.
And it was like when it happened, when that bomb hit, it was like, it makes your blood boil, right?
Yes. Yeah, it does. And we loosed the chains of darkness around the world through that exile from Afghanistan. No, it's totally,
I just kind of felt it.
Like I haven't slept for the last 36 hours. I didn't sleep for almost 4 days when Afghanistan fell, because it was so, I knew what it did to my kids' generation. And so we have to set the conditions for us to win the next conflict. And look up here, my charter, if I could do two things, number one would be, don't fight wars we shouldn't fight. It's incredibly important, but we have to absolutely set the conditions to win the ones we have to fight. And what we have to understand is, because we've been so weak for so long, that we have ceded the choice of whether we enter conflict to our enemies. We are so used in this country to choosing whether we get into a fight or not. And I think that we've been so weak for so long that we no longer are in control of that decision. And we have to be prepared to fight. And the way to win the next conflict is actually to not fight it, because we properly set the conditions to win it, and we properly deterred it. That's what we have to do. We absolutely have to fundamentally transform our military. And I think we've actually done that through the reconciliation process. The $150 billion of additional defense spending that we have
Golden Dome
is, yes, largely very good spending. Largely, not perfect, not, I'm a freshman here, but from a government perspective, it's largely very good. What I'm now concerned about is the $850 billion baseline that we absolutely have to go through and reinvest into technologies that will actually help us deter and defeat China. Because if we're being honest, what we've been investing in has not helped us win the last 30 years of war. And we've got to be sober-minded about that.
It's pretty clear in Ukraine, right? Which is like a straight up proxy war. by the CIA, and it's not gone well. Like with this audience, what we want is peace.
Yes.
Like with this audience, we don't want stupid. Like the reason why we hate these wars in the Middle East, in Gaza, in Ukraine, is that it has these are the sparks that turn into raging fires that pull us in. It's not just our treasure and our treasury, which is hundreds of billions of dollars, but it's also, of course, our greatest treasure, which is our people. Get put in the dirt for other countries, and we're sick of it. It's an entire generation that's just sick of that.
And even more so than that, you have an entire generation of veterans that are just completely disillusioned, and broken.
Yes,
right. Because and it's
powerful, man.
It's like, look, if you want to, and really, please understand this. And I know we're all on the same side here, but if you want to help veterans, don't fight wars we shouldn't fight. Absolutely, let them win the ones we do. That's it.
Yep. Word. That's an entire generation walking through, and then like having smart defense. Yes. Letting Elon and letting some of these kick-ass companies, some of these AI companies build some really scary shit.
Yes.
And letting it rip. And just like the best deterrence, right? It's like,
and that's what we're doing, right? So we're working a systematic process now on the House Armed Services Committee. Like we got the $150 billion, a good spend. Now we got the $850 billion. Half of that is payroll. So that's just off the top. That's going to our soldiers. Now we've got to focus our Army, our Navy, our Marine Corps, our Air Force on making sure that we're investing in assets that are actually relevant to deterring and defeating China. We've got to get rid of all these parochialisms that we have. And I've been calling and trying to educate all of my compadres up here in Congress that, look, just because it's in your district doesn't mean it's actually relevant to deterring or defeating China. And we've got to be very clear-minded about this, because we owe the American soldier, sailor, airman, and Marine the very best technology, because that's what China is providing to their troops. And if we want to not fight this war, if we really want to win it, we've got to be able to deter it. And if we fail to deter it, we're going to fight it. And the good news is that the same pathway by which we deter it is actually the same pathway by which we win it. So we're moving in the right direction right now, and I'm very pleased about that.
Final dorky question. Yeah. Do we need aircraft carriers anymore?
So the answer is,
it's like a big raging debate on the internet right now. Like, do we actually? The aircraft carrier is the most powerful weapon for the last 50 years.
Yes.
Do we need them anymore?
There is a lot of wisdom in understanding that they are a great source of pride, and they have been a great source of security for us as a nation, as a populace that looks at our aircraft carriers and our sailors standing and saluting as they're coming in through the bay or going out to sea, that is our ability to project force around the world. That is our ability to secure the United States of America from threats abroad. It has been one of our most incredible assets. But as we've learned from the Ukrainian conflict, where the Ukrainian military without a navy has sunk half of Russia's Black Sea naval fleet without a single ship of their own, you have to understand that in current circumstances, with the proliferation of relatively inexpensive yet very capable technologies, that some of these great, incredibly expensive and exquisite assets that we have are in some ways becoming actual strategic liabilities. And so the answer is, yes, we still need them. I don't know how many more we need to produce. And the reality is there's tactics and techniques and procedures of how we can use them and keep them safe, and still use them to project force in the next conflict. But how relevant those are 20 or 30 years from now, which is the service life of a carrier, now even pushing out to 40, I think is an honest question that we have to really analyze here before investing too much more in them.
Really cool. Mm-hmm. Really cool. Yeah. I mean, it's like, everyone's like, China can make a lot of aircraft carriers. I was like, well, yeah, but like they could be smoked like very quickly, from under the water, from above the water.
Yes.
From top of the water.
And look, we have to have a seafaring capability. There's no question about that. But when we try to overcome the tonnage deficit that everybody knows about that exists with China, even amongst the sum of all of our ally base, there's a still significant tonnage gap. There is some wisdom in saying, well, we might be better off investing in technologies that deny their use of their capabilities, as opposed to continuing to invest in trying to catch up with our capability gap, just figure out ways to eliminate the threat. We're looking very carefully.
We're just talking about aircraft carriers. That's all.
What's up?
We got Byron Donalds.
How are you? Good. You're.
That's cool. That's